Well, we get to talk about space, which
Okay,
is always
that's
fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
Flavia came all the way from Australia, so quite the trek. It's like, it's such an exciting time in space right now.
Yeah.
People are probably familiar with what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are doing to not only change the cost of rockets, but change our access to space and how rapidly we're able to get to space. And then there's this whole other layer in aerospace right now that I think a lot of people maybe are not as familiar with, which is below these billionaires and the big rockets, there are small rocket companies appearing all over the world who are trying to go from launching once a month to launching once a week, every 3 days, every day. And then there are a ton of small satellite companies who are kind of revolutionizing what we can do in space and the cost of building interesting things. And that's sort of where you fit in. Can you explain a little bit about what STYT does basically you're trying to build a space internet.
Correct. So for Ashlee is right. Space is changing a lot. It's been changing a lot in the past 10 years. I was one of the space geeks. I fell in love with space when I was young, and super nerd. But in the past 4 to 5 years, I've seen this change, driven by the names you just mentioned. But there is this startup community that it's growing all over the world, right? I moved to Australia now 5 years ago. Australia, it's just amazing country. Except when I arrived there was one space startup in the entire country. So I was like, where I am. I work European Space Agency. I work on nanosatellites, Mars missions, all the fun stuff.
You don't sound Australian.
No, I'm Italian. And then I got there, and in the same time, there were company so to give an idea, I don't know how many of you know space, but a satellite is a big thing.
Size of a bus.
It's size of a bus.
Yeah.
Sometimes the size of the stage. They usually go very, 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 very far in space, what we call GEO. It's 36,000 kilometers from Earth. They are $1 billion, and it's historically been a government type of exercise. In the past 6 or 7 years, people started, I think a little bit more than that. The past 20 years, people started inventing this platform called CubeSat. They're as big as this little cube you see in front of you. They were used for universities to give access to students or not go to space. When I moved to Australia 5 years ago, I started seeing, and I was playing with them, university level, science and TV mission. I've got patents in propulsion system on this little satellite. I love the topic. I moved to Australia for personal reasons, and then I see a company called Planet in US, actually co-founded by an Australian, building a constellation of these satellites, like a constellation of little bees, going around Earth for HD imaging. And Planet is an amazing company now. They've launched more than 200. Clearly, they were doing something amazingly. And then there were big constellations, a lot of money, saying, okay, we're going to give internet to people. And this is company like OneWeb, or even Elon Musk is now doing this with SpaceX. The idea of internet for everyone in the world. This is really expensive as well. Everyone really understood what was happening in space. That the cost of rockets was going down and you can launch everything you want. It's like the transformation that happened with the computers. If you think about that movie, the beautiful movie of last year, Hidden Figures, where this first IBM big computer comes to NASA. They're gigantic. Now we got this that has got more power of every computational power used for the Apollo mission. Space is happening the same. 4 years ago, I met my co-founder, and we were like, okay, space is changing. It's time to create something amazing and jump on space entrepreneurship. That is, I'm a young girl, maybe a bit talented, and he's an amazing entrepreneur, but who does these things? It was impossible, would have been impossible to do 20 years ago, but now we are in a moment in time that is not simply what Elon is doing, it's also some amazing technologies like 3D printing and additive manufacturing, new technologies in electronics that allow you to build a satellite for $200K.
So a normal, like the bus-sized satellites cost billions and billions of dollars, and so in the satellites, the shoebox-sized ones you're making cost a couple of $100,000.
To launch and to build. And when you build something of $1 billion, you cross fingers, doesn't explode on the launch pad, And these little things are like, well, if it explodes, whatever. But the point is that commercial space is not simply, I can launch anything at low cost. It's like, what am I going to do with that? We have seen very, very big satellite companies going bankrupt constantly in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
With the idea we spend billions and then customers will come. Doesn't really work this way. And now it's commercial space. You're VC backed up. You've got money. You need to have customers. You need to understand exactly what is the application. We completely fall in love with IoT. Internet of Things is another buzzword that you've been hearing most probably all the way through this conference. IoT is a mess, and no one knows what it is. Let me tell you this. I've been working on this for 3 years. I live in a country that is gigantic. Australia is gigantic and extremely unconnected. 98% of the country has got no connectivity whatsoever. Industrial Internet of Things is the idea that you got a farmer that can connect his 100,000 cows. Is the idea of you got a shipping container that every mango has got a chip inside. We waste like 60% of the mangoes on the supply chain.
Can I pause you there for just 1 second?
Got the mangoes.
Well, and so so there's, like you mentioned, there's all these efforts to build these constellations of satellites, and so Planet Labs started doing these imaging satellites where they take a photo of every spot on the Earth every single day, which is a first. Not even spy agencies can do that. And so you guys want to build, rather than satellites that take pictures, you're doing connectivity. And so just like you were talking about with the, I just paused you for a second because I love the mangoes and the trees and everything. So your goal is to kind of surround the Earth with, at the beginning, kind of 3 to 6 satellites?
Satellites too.
And then eventually, how many?
Oh.
Like dozens of...
there is the thing, okay? How many do you need? If you connect people, you need a lot of satellites to connect people because people want to watch YouTube high speed and check what the cats are doing and how they're killing each other. And that's very high speed, okay? So then it's a lot of satellites. Internet of Things is a different exercise.
So you're just providing this data, like
bits of data.
Bits of data.
Bits of data everywhere in the world. Bits of data, not real time. It's such a change in thoughts about what we used to see in the past 10 years. Your life in the past 20 years, everything you have seen, from the very first moment you put your hand on an iPhone, and now you cannot live without, has been infrastructure for people to be connected at high speed. And I can promise you the world is going to change. And in 20 years' time, you will not use an iPhone anymore. So
if you want to provide this layer of data service everywhere in the world. So today, if you're out in the rural areas, obviously you don't have internet. So we're talking about farms. We're talking about, like you said, the Internet of Things is this buzzword, and it's sort of like if you have these sensors everywhere.
What are you going to do with that?
And how do you actually connect them? So if you surround the world with these satellites and you're just beaming internet everywhere, walk me through, like in detail, a couple of the examples. Like the mangoes, so this is the idea that for shipping, you would apply this technology to sort of track everything that you're shipping.
The idea is that we do not really track things. Internet of Things, I see Internet of Things as 2 big areas, smart cities and industries. Smart cities is smart cities, so it's your Fitbit connected to your fridge and all that amazing things and traffic lights. We don't do that. The cities are well covered by terrestrial infrastructure. It will happen. You will have your house connected. I'm passionate about industrial IoT. Industrial IoT is the 4th industrial revolution. We are in the middle of it. I find it fascinating. We don't even know it's happening. But everyone keeps saying that. Oh, we are in the middle of 4th industrial revolution. We live and breathe customers every day. It's fascinating. Okay, industries. What are the industries that leverage and the world we are living? And it's agriculture, it's oil and gas, it's mining, it's transport. Historically, these industries, they do not connect things. They got sensors, or they don't. They are not on the net. So you have, a farm with sensors and a truck going around and checking that on a pen and a paper. We got a client that measured 200,000 trees that grow, in forests in gigantic areas, and they go there to check the growth of the trees with a pen and a paper. Right? We are in 2018. So the Internet of Things in industry is this gigantic shift on measuring everything. okay? So having thousands of sensors in an agri-tech field, it got 20,000 sensors in a shipping container.
And like with the trees, so instead of somebody going around and seeing how
With a
much
caliper and a van.
to see how those trees grown, you would just have a sensor that's always on the tree and then always communicating
And
back to space.
it goes back to your house, your factory, whatever you are, and give you data. I can give a lot of examples. I mean, if you think about agri-tech operate with a little bit of GPS, but all historical data. So if you have sensors in the soil, there is an American company that got sensors in grains. So you scatter 1,000 grains in the field that you can see the growth. I mean, these are industries that live on a little edge of innovation. And the boom that can happen when you can measure everything and you can increase the quality. So we work with vineyards, right? And when you produce wine, the vines has to be stressed. So you have to give a lot of water. Otherwise, the wine is not good. So imagine, it's happening. They got sensors for each vine. So you control everything. It sounds crazy, but you cannot do without space. I mean, 90% of the industry has got no 3G, no connectivity whatsoever. And existing satellites are expensive. So you can't spend $500 a month to connect a vine, no matter what amazing wine you do out of it. So there is an infrastructure not present.
So we have to build this new internet to bring the cost down. I just wanted, so we're going to do a polling question in just a second, so if everybody gets their smartphones out for that. And then I was going to change and throw the question to you. Are you a,
person.
Yeah, as space is getting exciting, and you've got Elon is charging towards Mars. Jeff Bezos seems a little more focused on the moon.
On the moon.
If humanity is going to explore one of these, are you a moon or a Mars person?
First of all, I'm a moon or a Mars girl. Okay, so I am an innovation person, okay, and I love what these guys are doing. I mean, we are living a time of the world that exploration is going to be the next 10 years, and they're going to make it happen. And there is so much that needs to be put in place to make it happen. I think the moon is a good step. Mars is an incredible, so I gave a TED talk why we are going to Mars and why Elon is going to Mars. I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible that I got a 5-year-old that in 20 years' time she will go on holiday to Mars, maybe 30 times.
Yeah.
So I think
holiday.
I'm a Mars person.
Let's see what everybody looks like. Well, most people are Mars people.
Fly me to the moon. I prefer life on Mars. Life on Mars is not going to be amazing. I think it's just the first step towards conquering. And I love the fact that this is happening. And on the surface, it makes no sense. But that's humankind, right? Yeah. Exploration push boundaries, and we don't even know what's going to happen. So you see like asteroid minings and all the things that we are doing to put in place this journey. Huh?
So, and since we're in Paris, what Elon has done and what Jeff has started to do is put a lot of pressure on the traditional aerospace companies, especially the rocket companies. I mean, an organization like Arianespace, they're really under the gun now to bring the cost of their launches down and to stay competitive. So you come from Europe, so what do you make of how Europe has addressed this challenge? It looks like right now the U.S., which had fallen way behind in the launch business, suddenly is kind of the place to be. So
there are different launchers, if you talk launchers. So you touched a little bit to that. There are these big launchers that, they got these goals to go to Mars or bring big satellite in space. Elon is doing beautifully there. He's got a very Mars focus. There are launchers just dedicated to nanosatellites. US has got some. One of the biggest is in New Zealand. And there's one in Australia as well. And then is Europe that has got launchers that can compete. But not just Europe. India has got amazing launchers, and Russia. So the ecosystem is full of opportunities. And historically, there was no reason why these prices had to go down, actually, but now there is. I mean, Indian launchers are super competitive, super competitive. I mean, super competitive.
Yeah.
And I think in Europe, they are starting understanding this. And I see prices going down. What's going to happen next? I don't know, because the speed of a SpaceX company, no matter how we look at that, or what Jeff is doing, or Vector, or Rocket Lab, is enormous. It's tremendous. It's innovation and its biggest, path. And Elon keeps disrupting himself. He gave this speech in Adelaide, in Australia in September when he stood up in front of 4,000 people that were, like super PhD professor in space and say, I'm gonna build a rocket to disrupt my rockets, and with that one, I'm just gonna disrupt all the airplanes in the world, and we're gonna go from Adelaide to London in 1 hour. Who does these things?
Elon
right?
says lots of things.
Yeah, I know, but then he does them. I don't know, you spoke with him way more than me, but it's that pushing everyone to do better, is creating that fear in everyone that he's gonna make it, so they do it. I love this.
Yeah.
Maybe he's gonna achieve 80%, but all the other people around like, oh my God, he's gonna do it, I have to do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we find ourselves talking with investors, the first things they ask us is that, are you doing something that Elon has wrote anywhere in some articles? I'm like, I hope not. Otherwise, you're not gonna make it, he's gonna make it. So there is that idea that we live in this amazing time when people, a couple of persons are pushing us.
Yeah. So there's a few questions coming in. This is one that I hear a lot because I write about space all the time, and it doesn't seem to get addressed that much. So today, I think the Earth is surrounded by about 1,000 satellites, and if companies like yours and OneWeb and SpaceX get their way, so we would go from 1,000 satellites surrounding the Earth right now to launching anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 a year. So what happens to space pollution? Is this a good idea? Because we already have an issue with this stuff now, and now we're gonna have 10 times as many satellites, and they're all small and going all over the place.
It's there are pros and cons here. Okay, so all the 1,000 satellites out there, not most of it, but all, they are in this geostationary orbit, 36,000 kilometers from Earth. Once a satellite gets in the end of the lifetime, you're not gonna bring it back. You're gonna push it out. So that's been happening for 15 years. There is something called the Kessler syndrome. If you go to YouTube, you can Google it. There are videos that shows you all these little things around Earth. It's massive. The Kessler syndrome is the idea that if you don't start removing pieces, it will happen gravity, like the movie. They'll start, crashing on top of each other. Then there is LEO, low Earth orbit, when these nanosatellites gonna go. This is 500 kilometers from Earth. The reason why we can go there, that is better, right? It's closer, it's cheaper, is because we got this new tech. We got new amazing tech, and something can be small and can be put out there. In time, it will burn in the atmosphere and it will be gone. It's like self-disposable nappy.
Yeah.
Okay. So somehow it's super scary. On the other hand, this technology allows us to have a satellite that lasts like an iPhone. And when it's gone, it's gonna go.
So, so you're saying they'll sort of break up.
Let's see if they're gonna crash on top of each other when they go down. That's gonna be interesting to see. They are super regulated, these things. Super regulated. Even if you see that sometimes it's a Wild West, there are bodies all around the world to regulate.
But we've already seen that we have satellite companies that are setting up unregulated satellites.
It happened this year. There's been 4 satellites that are regulated in space by a Silicon Valley startup.
As this gets privatized, it is like the Wild
West.
It
happens. It's the Wild West.
So
best time.
To start a satellite company in Australia, how much money do you have to raise for something like this, and what does your money get you?
I was in Australia. If I had just 1 penny for everyone that told me you have to be in Silicon Valley to have a space startup, I'd be the richest girl you've ever met. And I'm a CEO of a space startup. I'm the poorest girl you ever met, right? Okay. We raised $5 million. We're going to launch 2 satellites. Now we got product customers all around the world. We will have to raise more. I do not want to raise $1 billion. I want to bootstrap this. I want to get to a point that this is what space can do, like a software company. And so it's changing completely the numbers. I will have to raise more, but the key is that we don't have to raise, $300 million to create a space startup. You can do it way less.
Yeah. And there's a question, it was kind of what's your core business? So I don't know if we explain things that well. We're just about out of time. So tell me
It's a pitch of 30 seconds.
Yeah. What is your goal for, basically you want to create a space internet service that people can use to get data from these sensors. So you would be like an internet service provider of sorts. So tell me when you want to have that service operating.
What is interesting that at STYT, we want to change IoT forever. So we are launching our satellites by leveraging all the CC infrastructure. STYT is a software company. Now it sounds crazy, but we have created a software stack that can change IoT the way people use it forever. And that's the craziness of that. Satellites, you can buy them off the shelf. and you can call yourself a software company. It's just not important anymore who builds the satellites, on when or why. You buy them off the shelf. And the key is, can you create a product that everyone can use? So STYT is already using leverage existing satellite company, bringing them into this market. I was making fun a little bit. We met my co-founder in the Uber come to here, and we are like, we want to be, everyone would say like Uber or Airbnb of space. We can't do that because in the infrastructure, you need your own satellites. But what if that gets so like commoditized and so nonsense that the key is creating a software stack? Now this is what STYT does. Sounds very complicated, but the message that I want to try to give is that we live in a world, okay, in which you do not need infrastructure to change the world. You do not need heavy infrastructure to change the world. You need smartness.
Okay.
And it opens up a lot of, so we're already selling around the world. It's really good fun. And the typical startup nightmare, you know, of run a space startup, but it's good.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Later this year, we're going to be having a space issue of Business Week, and I'll be writing about STYT and some of these other competing satellite services. There's actually a handful of companies that have different approaches to this, and so you can read more about that there. And Flavia, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.